like to introduce someone that I've come to really respect and admire as one of the top leaders in the industry. Bob Willig, the Executive Director and CEO of SME.
Good morning. Good morning. I don't know how to follow that introduction, so I'll just say thank you to Jeff and thank you to AT&T for their support this morning. So, as Jeff said, I'm the Executive Director and CEO of SME, and I'm really thrilled to be here and welcome you all to be here today. You probably know, but SME is a nonprofit. We're 91 years old, and really our focus is dedicating to the advancement of the manufacturing ecosystem. We lead this by elevating manufacturers, academia, and the entire practitioner market together as we drive forward both technology development and talent development. We really do believe, and if you wouldn't be here if you didn't believe this, manufacturing holds the key to prosperity. It's what helped establish the post-industrial era boom of the middle class in the United States, and it continues to drive forward. Part of what we need to recognize, though, is the need for continual drive of continuous improvement, manufacturing efficiency, gains in efficiency as we drive forward, and that's really what we'll talk about today. So SME's mission is around driving the adoption of advanced technologies through commerce, collaboration, and convening our industry together, but also helping develop that next generation talent base, inspiring, igniting the intellectual curiosity of those who want to come and be a part of manufacturing. Now, I'll tell you, I was on the other side of the building just a moment ago talking to 50 incredibly inspiring manufacturing engineering students from Clemson, Tuskegee, and Auburn. Most of what they wanted to ask me were questions about smart manufacturing adoption. What does it mean? How do we do it? How do we learn more about it? And then I get to come talk to you about it. So it's ironic to hear students, the 18 to 23-year-old undergrad and graduate students asking those questions. It gives me hope for the future as we continue to establish the groundwork and the basis as we move forward. So I'd also like to welcome you to South Tech. This is 30 plus years of convening and bringing people together from distributors, equipment builders, really creating commerce opportunities on the floor, but expanding to bring these conference opportunities here as well. So it's thrilling to be here. Part of what SME values is the opportunity to collaborate and cooperate with our industry partners. I think we're stronger together and better as an industry, especially as a nonprofit. And we've been working with CESMII since 2021 to drive smart manufacturing further and faster. We absolutely value that relationship, as we do with all of the institutes in Manufacturing USA. I think you'll see I think at least 4 of the institutes are here now. Some of them are holding their annual meeting, but all of them are here. And thank you again for helping support that message in industry going forward. Back to CESMII, in a smart amount of time, we've convened the Smart Manufacturing Executive Council. Many of you are sitting in the audience today. I call this a national think tank, really compromising the big brains of smart manufacturing and how we can advance it, adopt it, democratize it as we move forward, really to engage executives and practitioners and academia and take it to the next level. Is the Smart Manufacturing Executive Council focused on Fortune 500 companies becoming smart? I would argue no. They already know how to do that. It's getting the rest of the 97% of the supply chain of manufacturers across our nation to understand how to adopt smart manufacturing principles, lean principles, and the idea of becoming more efficient producers. Thrilled to be here today with this group of executives, and as I say, big brains in this space. I mentioned the Smart Manufacturing Executive Council and a couple of the institutes. DOE is here, Manufacturing USA is here, NIST is here, Modern Makers is here, and some of the Modern Makers have been featured, and you may see more of that going forward. The CESMII board is here, SMX exhibitors are here, and many other aligned partners. So on behalf of SME, I'd like to welcome you all to be here today as well. Today we're here to examine the need for innovation in the U.S., manufacturing innovation, and we'll hear from experts. The panels and discussions that we'll have today should be both inspiring and challenging, and hopefully shape our future and where we're headed. to realize a sustainable, competitive, inspiring, and prosperous market position going forward. So I want to talk just a very quick minute about SMX. That's our smart manufacturing experience. You'll see it here. It's branded here as part of SouthTech. But also next year in Pittsburgh, we will have a specific event dedicated to smart manufacturing. I'd encourage you all to learn and listen and hear more about when that will occur, and we'll be announcing that shortly. So I'm looking forward to seeing many of you there and continuing these conversations as we go forward with smart manufacturing. So I'd like to bring Jeff back up on stage, and first off, thank you all for being here. Looking forward to a phenomenal, inspiring day. And with that, let's bring Jeff back up. Thank you.
So like Bob said, SME is one of the oldest and most prominent associations dedicated to advancing manufacturing in the industry. And CESMII and SME are teaming up in alignment to optimize resources and strengths to benefit the entire manufacturing ecosystem, to help lower costs and complexity through democratization. So I'm excited to be here as part of this, and thank you, Bob and SME, for hosting us here today. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. Have a great day.
So before getting started, I want to level set everyone with the time that we're living in right now, which is most commonly called Industry 4.0, which is the nickname or moniker given to the fourth industrial revolution. And that term was famously announced to the world at Hanover Fair in 2011, and since then it's taken hold all around the world. Unfortunately, it's taken on different definitions as it's taken hold all around the world. So here's the way I like to describe it. Industry 3.0 is about automation, or the reduction of human intervention in processes. Industry 4.0 is about cognition, or the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding. And what separates these two is your ability to properly capture and harness the power of data. Now consider this. According to IoT analytics, we're surrounded by a staggering 16.7 billion connected IoT devices. That's roughly 2 for every person on the planet. And that doesn't even count cell phones and laptops. And it's these devices that are creating an unprecedented revolution in data generation. To put this in perspective, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, famously said in 2010 that the amount of data generated since the dawn of civilization up until 2003 was estimated to be 5 exabytes worth of data. Sounds impressive, right? Fast forward to 2023, and according to Statista, we're staring at a mind-boggling 120 zettabytes that we're anticipated to generate this year alone. To grasp that magnitude, that means that we're going to produce roughly 24,000 times the amount of data this year as we did in all of civilization up until 2003. Or to put it another way, we're pumping out 5 exabytes worth of data every couple hours now. That's crazy. Now you may be wondering, yeah, but who's producing and who's collecting all that data? It's not the financial system. Nope, it's not healthcare. It's not retail. According to McKinsey Global Institute, manufacturing collects nearly twice the amount of data as the next highest industry. Yet here's where reality sinks in. Of the roughly 2,000 petabytes worth of data collected by manufacturing over the past 10 years, according to Industrial IoT Consortium, we've let 99% of it slip through our fingers, discarded like yesterday's newspaper. But here's a starker revelation. According to Splunk, 55% of enterprise data is a mystery, unknown, unused by anyone in the organization. That's kind of like going to explore the ocean and having absolutely no idea how deep it is. Now, why does this matter? Because there's gold in that data. According to University of Texas, Austin, a 10% increase in data usability results in the average Fortune 1000 company's revenue increasing by $2 billion, with a B, billion dollars. And according to McKinsey, data-driven companies are 23 times more likely to acquire new customers over their peers. Now, while new technologies and this surge in data creation are undeniably propelling us into this transformative era, they alone aren't the answer. The true catalyst for success lies beyond mere tools and numbers. It's about adopting the right mindset, a digital mindset grounded in smart manufacturing principles. So I'll leave you with this thought that should run through the course of today's events. When it comes to smart manufacturing, technology is the tool, people are the focus, and more value is the outcome. So today, we have a whole slew of great presenters and panelists, and they're going to be talking about how the world has shifted and will continue to shift in the era of Industry 4.0, and what industry groups like CESMII and SME and others are doing to support it, and what manufacturers can do to thrive in this transformative time we're living in right now. And so to start with that, I would like to introduce the Jims. Jim Wetzel, the former CEO of CESMII, and Jim Davis, the father of smart manufacturing, to kick us off this morning for unlocking the future of smart manufacturing through democratization. Let's welcome the Jims. Thank you.
This is a test. Is this on? Yes, it is.
It's on.
It's on. So we are the Jims. So if anyone wants to ask a question, just say, "Hey, Jim." One of the reasons when Jeff uses the word the father of smart manufacturing, it makes me feel very, very old. And Jim, I don't know. I think I'm older than you are, but
Yeah, I think 30 years.
yeah, we
older
were
than
doing
you.
AI and machine learning before cybersecurity was invented. I don't know about you. But one of the things we want to do today is there's a lot of history up on the stage today, and we'd like to kind of give you a retrospective on where smart manufacturing has come from, but mostly give you a perspective on where it is going. One of the things that Jim and I were just talking about with respect to Jeff's comments, I think Dean Bartles is in the office, but right around 2007 is when we coined the name smart manufacturing. So this predated CESMII. Dean did a scientific survey and went to Google and just Googled smart manufacturing. In 2007, what was it, Dean? It was about 15 hits. I did it a few months ago, so 2023, we were at around 6 billion hits. So something has changed over about 15, 20 years here. So Dean, thanks for starting this off. Although we have to admit that Google was new back then. So let us dive in a little bit, and let's see, how do we go backwards here? So one of the first questions that Jim and I get often is, what exactly is smart manufacturing? And one of the things we did back in 2017 with the roadmap was put together this definition. You know, Jim and I were in the room, Jim was leading this effort, and Jim, you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, for sure. So thank you. So everyone wonders about what the definition of smart manufacturing is, so we had to come up with one at the time and said, you know, it's really around the right data at the right time for the right purpose, and that ultimately morphed into this phrase of information-driven, event-driven, efficient, collaborative orchestration of your business, physical and digital processes within the plant, factories, and across the entire value chain. And since that definition was written many years ago, we pretty much found out that it was a mouthful. If you could click, Jim. What really is going on here is we're trying to look at these outcomes. So quite honestly, you know, I look around this room and it says smart manufacturing, smart manufacturing, smart manufacturing. And I would really rather talk about what the outcomes is and less about what the word on top is. What you see here, less time is spent finding information or making sense from it and more on informed decision making. Decisions are made when critical events occur. There's a constant pulse reading on the plant and collaboration with support functions. Time and resource usage is optimized. Optimizing one machine, one work cell, or one plant is not sufficient. We must optimize the extended enterprise. The business and technical disciplines are always synchronized. You look at those outcomes, and I would challenge you, and I did this in the workshop yesterday. If you took this slide and copied it for your own organization, and you scratched off the word smart manufacturing is, and instead you put your company on top, and you basically say, company ABC's vision is to have less time spent finding information, to make decisions when critical events occur, to have a constant pulse, to have time and resources optimized, and so on and so on. This is the beginning, actually, not of a definition of smart manufacturing, but actually as a future state statement about what you hope to be true. And so we didn't necessarily intend for that to happen, but you think about the power of taking those blowouts that are in there in this document and making them yours and owning them, and then turning that actually into a future statement or a vision statement for what you hope to be true.
And Jim, I'll just add, if I'm riding an elevator with any one of you, I still go back to the standby. Smart manufacturing is about the right data, at the right time, in the right place, in the right format, to the right people, so that the machines and people can make good decisions. And it really gets to this point about the importance of data. And if you don't have the data organized in the right way, things in your plant, things in your supply chains are not so smart. And that'll be one of the themes that we'll be talking about through this morning.
So here's where it gets tough. So historically, when we started with smart manufacturing, we started with Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition, this topic of democratization came up. And you see in CESMII's booth and whatnot, you'll keep hearing, Jeff even mentioned it in the intro. This concept of democratization is huge. And if you look at the numbers, if there's roughly, and this is a debatable number, but if there's roughly 400,000 manufacturers in the United States, how many are being served by smart manufacturing? How many are being served by some of this stuff? And how much of this technology stack, how much of the people process side of this is actually doable by 400,000 manufacturers? So CESMII's got the accountability of democratization. And when you actually take on democratization, you soon find out that today it's probably about half of 1% of the manufacturers are actually implementing these concepts. And I know quite a few of you that are sitting at the tables here would agree with me. You not only have the challenge of democratizing it with your own organization and lifting the boats within your own company and your own plants, the larger challenge that we all face is how to do this outside our walls. And as we think about end-to-end, and we think about supply chain, we think about all the manufacturing that goes in, not just to the conversion of raw materials to a finished product, but actually getting the raw materials to you and all the intermediary work that has to happen, and how those suppliers can take advantage of these smart manufacturing concepts and bring them to the table and exchange data between them. And I think you're going to hear more about what's possible later in the day, but this democratization topic and the scalability of it is a massive issue for CESMII and the nation.
Some of the vocabulary I like to use around this word has to do with three abilities, right? One is the economic sustainability, one is environmental sustainability, and one is social sustainability. And really, to Jim's point, if we want to really impact these, we have to think outside the factory walls. And if we don't think about those, all we're really saying is, if I stay and look only inside my factory, I really can't have this environmental impact, social impact, that we all desire today. It becomes very, very important.
So to support democratization and to really kind of rally around and get these concepts in, CESMII's really trying to reframe the conversation to, it's not just about stuff, it's a mindset. And hopefully you will have heard this. You can go to the booth and learn this stuff. You can talk to me or Jim or any of us about this, is that once you understand that this transformation that we're going to go through is about a mindset, the same way quality culture, continuous improvement culture, safety culture. You think about smart manufacturing, the data intensity, the acting on decisions, or making decisions, acting on data. All of that stuff is really a mindset that needs to be embraced in a new paradigm shift. And so that's the process to be used to try to figure out how am I going to get to democratization.
And I'll just add one of my, one of our close colleagues, Sujit Chan at Rockwell, who was with us way back at the beginning. I think he put it pretty succinctly. He basically said that manufacturing does not know how to scale. The word scale comes into the picture here. And if you really think about this, manufacturing is grown up over a long period of time. We know really well how to solve problems, but if you ask, do we know how to scale? How do we move adoption forward? How do we move data at scale? How do we stop reinventing the wheel over and over again? This is what we're really talking about, a mindset change. And it's really quite significant given the years and years of which manufacturing has grown up. So we really like to impress on that point, and you'll hear that a couple times more just this morning.
So complexity. You think about where we were 10 or 15 years ago trying to deliver on the concepts of smart manufacturing, and quite frankly, a lot of the stuff was PowerPoints. And those PowerPoints really showed a concept that we were able to have data ingested from our factories, then that data be contextualized so that all of these silos of information are gone, and then it would bridge out to applications. And that was our PowerPoint, and we spent a lot of time, Jim, on trying to figure out, does that really represent what we need to have happen, and how could we deal with that and kind of hide some of the complexity that comes natural to that.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the complexity over 15 years has done nothing but increase. So if I go back to this social responsibility, there's increased regulation that we need to deal with. There's increased pressure on environmental sustainability. We're all under increased pressure to deliver products faster, increased pressure to drive the specification, increased pressure to bring all these together, increased pressure around higher level KPIs, et cetera, et cetera. All of these add to the complexity, and things are becoming more and more integrated. How do you actually deal with all of this? And this is actually where smart manufacturing comes into play. If I go back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were talking about smart in a much, much smaller way. If I fast forward to today, 2023, the complexity is much, much more, and you really have to think about smart manufacturing, to move these along. And if I think about the discussions we're having with the Department of Energy, where we're now talking about electrification, we're talking about alternative fuel sources, all of these add to the complexity as well. So nothing's happening but complexity is increasing. You have to work with data, you have to put these models, you have to work with our processes in a much, much better way going forward. This is the place that smart manufacturing plays. I really think it's kind of hit a sweet spot this year compared to where we started 15, 20 years ago.
This complexity to actually deliver against all of these new requirements has historically resulted in this kind of 80-20 slide. And we continue to hear this story over and over and over again, and hopefully it rings true for you in the audience, that essentially 80% of our time is spent in configuring things. 80% of our time is spent finding data. 80% of our time is spent kind of getting ready to do work. And we only have 20% time or less to actually do the action. So you've heard over the last decade this issue of pilot purgatory. You've heard about projects not delivering the value. Some of that essence of failure is in this 80%. And so there's a lot of work going on at CESMII to try to figure out how to flip this equation and make the hard work of dealing with this complexity and dealing with this deployment to go to 20% or less so that you actually have time to get the value added out of it.
Yeah, and if I put this in the context of AI and machine learning, which, it's actually great to see the resurgence of this. We were building these models back in the 80s before the network even existed. That was a real problem, not having that. We now have the network. We can now scale. We have these ways to do this. The tools are really quite robust. But one of the things that's happening is I see everyone moving towards application, move very, very quickly. Let's go build an application, and are not worrying about the data. And I can tell you over and over again, if you don't get the data right, your application is not going to be very, very smart. And you really have to put those two together. So this is where you think about this. This 80% probably has risen to 90% of the cost if we don't get this straightened out from a data infrastructure standpoint to take these kinds of things forward.
And that brings us to the famous slide of what got us here won't get us there. So the legacy approaches that we've had, the Industry 2.0, 3.0 approaches do not meet the needs of where we need to go in this future state, whether that be in that smart manufacturing is slide where it's described what my future should be around access to information and use of information. Today's reality of silos and not interoperable and so on is not where we need to land. And so that was what Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition was trying to address. That's what CESMII was formed to address, so that the outcomes of tomorrow around these first principles of smart manufacturing are true. And so CESMII's actually created these 7 first principles around interoperability, sustainability, security, scalability, resiliency, real-time, and proactive and semi-autonomous as attributes of what smart manufacturing systems should look like and integration of that should look like. And so if you think you can just take your existing systems and evolve there, I think you'll find that it's going to be a long haul to get there.
And I'd like to just do a call out on the item on the lower left and the security on the right-hand side. The security is talked about exceptionally. It's a very, very important topic, and I want to do a call out to our colleagues in CESMII. But if you look at this from a data perspective, as we try to increase interoperability with our data, try to build these machine learned models without really dealing with our data infrastructure, what we're really doing is increasing the security threat surface, and it actually is getting worse and worse. And we have to deal with that in new ways. So the security side of this becomes very, very important, and it's security with opportunity. You can't close things off. You now have to think about security in much, much richer ways, because we do have to scale. We have to become interconnected. We have to be able to work with the data, work with these models in much more interconnected ways. So I just want to do a call out on security because it is such an important topic, and recognize the CESMII colleagues that we're working with.
Scalability. We briefly talked about scalability, and Jimmy, maybe you want to just go to the next slide. We'll get into this.
I'll just jump in on this one. The past couple of years, about 100 of your colleagues, many of you, we tried to put together, there were so many agendas around what are we scaling, what do we mean by this, and so forth. And this chart is actually the outcome of many discussions, to try and put into context the different ways that this is being monetized, the different agendas of how this is going forward. So if you think about this, the lower left hand towards the origin of this, layer 1, there's so much discussion now around asset management. How do I run my equipment, my machine tools, these sorts of things in much better ways? There's a lot of headroom, a lot of economic capability to be had there. But if you look at it, where do I get the data to do this in the right way? Where do I get the data for these machine learned models? There's a lot of experience built into that data, and how do I get and draw from that? So a lot of stuff has to happen with the layer 1, and this is the kind of aspects where you get your data infrastructure put together, and you worry about, do I have all the right kind of data, and can I put those into play with the operations? If you do that, Then you can start working into line operations, higher KPIs, and more interoperability across the factory. And this extends immediately into the supply chains. So if I can exchange data, think about how I work with other companies, how I work with other factories in better ways, that's where you get into layer 2. And what we see here is in layer 1, we basically see about a 15% minimum economic value in just dealing with layer 1. If you go into layer 2, another 12 to 15% economic value shows up. And both of these are needed if you're going to do sustainability, if you're going to do some of the cross-company social responsibilities. And then there's the layer 3, we call it the supply chain resilience. This is the stuff that Doug Lawson talks about, because if I can track materials across an entire supply chain, increase the visibility of those materials and the products, we actually could begin working with our supply chains as a set of companies within the supply chain and not just independent companies. So think about these 3 layers as you go forward, and you have to nest these and move them forward into the scaled adoption that we're talking about. And then 2 other comments. The x-axis on this, we say industry connectedness and network effects. You have to start using the network in better ways. We have to start using it to move this data around. So this connectedness becomes very, very important. And you have to increase the connectedness in order to get to these supply chain impacts. The y-axis on this, which we put digitalization and smart manufacturing, you can think about this as dashboarding, efficient systems into automation, into autonomy. And think about that as a maturity level with respect to data and modeling, and how do I understand my plant operations. And if we all are trying to go these kinds of directions, the 2 have to go hand in hand, and you have to expand in a coordinated, systematic manner. So one of the things that CESMII is trying to do is to put together a systematic way, the playbooks to take this forward. And one last point is on this lower right-hand box. Back in 2017, we ran a full-blown economic analysis, and we tried to use what was a typical adoption rate of these sorts of technologies, and even aggressive at the time, of 10%. If you look at the advantages of about 15% economics, and you do an economic analysis about how companies tend to invest, you can see that there is a very, very large effect. A couple of $100 billion over 10 years, 1.5 million jobs. The point here is that's not fast enough. If you start putting in the environmental sustainability, the pressures that we're having on moving the manufacturing forward, we have to adopt faster. So you can think about the numbers. There's a lot of potential out there. What if we could move to 20% market penetration? What if we move to 30%? That's one of the questions we're asking. How do I accelerate this adoption? How do I accelerate this scaling?
I'd have comments, but we have about 1.5 minutes left, so we'll go through this.
Real quick on this slide, because we basically covered it. This slide was drawn back in 2010, so you can see the sustainability, you can see the resilient supply chains, you can see the plant-wide optimization. What has changed on this slide is 2 things. Back in 2010, what was in the center was the factory. We had a factory-centric view. Fast forward to today, 2023, we're looking at how do we talk about factories, how do I think about supply chains and ecosystems all together. That's a gigantic change. And then the other big change are these gray lines, because back then we were not thinking about networking factories. Today we are. So this is the interconnectedness that we're talking about, and how do we scale and use the network.
This challenge of end-to-end is really the most difficult thing that we're going to be embracing as we move forward. So let's take a look quickly. We have about 30 seconds left. We'll zip through this. What's been the progress, and where are we? Siloed systems. Keep hitting the click, Jim. Say no to siloed systems. As you think about, as people moving forward, they have embraced these topics that Jim talks about around interoperability and integration. If you think about what's needed to move forward to not only have legacy stuff be adopted into the new approach, you'll see these platforms kind of come up, the concept of platforms. You'll see this at the CESMII demonstration areas as well, about how you get through ingestion, how you get through contextualization, how you deal with your applications, and have that situation dealt with. Next.
And then this actually is a busy slide. I wanted to include it because I'd like to ask you to go visit the CESMII booth and look at this in more detail. But the point of this slide is that CESMII, the past 5 years, has run about $100 million in projects. And you can see what these projects are. You can glance through here and look at these point solutions that industry has decided these are focus of attention. These are high impact kinds of applications to work through. But what CESMII can do is look at across these projects and say, what are the patterns that we're seeing? What are the ways that we're seeing the data being used? Then how do we put a set of tools together that deal with these kinds of data uses, these ways of sharing data, moving data, and then moving into these applications, and then these various kinds of modeling. How do these become real impact? How to become implementation methods and taking them forward? So please take a look at this.
Yeah, so the stuff is real, right?
The stuff is real.
It's not just PowerPoints, it's real. Find out about this. I'll also challenge you as your organizations to think about your true north, about what you really want to happen in your future state and the path to get there. Think about that smart manufacturing is statement around what are those attributes. Next. And then I just want to introduce, and this is kind of a pre-release of kind of where CESMII is going on some topics, is the Smart Manufacturing Executive Council is working on this thing called a Smart Manufacturing Playbook, which is to help guide all of us and lift all of us up in how we're going to, how do we go do this? Talk about people, process, technology, organizations, structures, what must be true and able to achieve that future state. So that's a work in progress, but that'll be coming out soon as practical guidance of actually how to go about this future approach that we're taking.
And last slide, I'd like to just close by making one really important point. CESMII is one of 17 Manufacturing USA institutes, but what is very important is that all of us are public-private partnerships. That means commercial, government, and academia all working together to invest. And I can't stress the importance of working across and how do we deal with industry as an industry, not just individual factories, the value and the importance of a public-private partnership. And what makes that public-private partnership tick, in our case, is working very closely with the Department of Energy. UCLA is the home to smart manufacturing, and the CESMII leadership team. These three groups actually make this public-private partnership work so we could do these kinds of projects and think beyond just what you can do with your individual factories and think about the industry overall. So, Jim, I think we did end each other's sentences. We've been together a long time, so appreciate being up on the stage with you. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody.